Take a breath. Just take a breath. Because what I'm about to say might sting a little. It might make you uncomfortable. It might even make you want to close this out and scroll to something easier. But if you stay, if you actually sit with what I'm about to share with you, there is a very real chance that your life will look different 6 months from now. Not because of luck. Not because circumstances changed. But because you changed the one thing that was always within your control. So let's begin. Section 1, the comfortable lie we all tell ourselves. There's a story I want you to imagine. A man wakes up late. He blames his alarm. He rushes out the door, spills coffee on his shirt, blames the cup. He hits traffic, blames the city. He arrives at work stressed, snaps at a colleague, and when his boss pulls him aside later to talk about his attitude, he blames his morning. That evening, he calls his friend and says, "You won't believe the day life threw at me." Sound familiar? Now here's the uncomfortable question: how much of that man's day was life's fault, and how much of it was his? He didn't set a backup alarm. He filled the cup too full. He left no buffer time for traffic. He carried that stress into the office like a torch and let it burn everyone around him. Life didn't do that. He did. But here is the thing, this man is not a bad person. He is not uniquely flawed or broken. He is doing something that almost every single human being on this planet does on a daily basis. He is outsourcing the blame. And it feels good to do it. It feels like relief. Because if it's life's fault, then you don't have to carry the weight of it. You get to be the victim of a story that someone else is writing. The problem? Victims don't have power. And you were born with more power than you've ever been taught to use. Section 2, the 93% truth. Now you might be wondering where that number comes from. 93%. It sounds precise. Almost clinical. Let me explain it this way. Researchers who study human behavior, psychologists, philosophers, they all tend to arrive at the same uncomfortable conclusion through different roads. The vast majority of the suffering people experience in everyday life is not caused by external events. It is caused by their response to external events. The Stoics knew this over 2,000 years ago. Epictetus, a man who was born into slavery, who had no money, no status, no freedom in the conventional sense, looked at his life and said something that should stop you cold. He said, "Men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things." Read that again. You are not disturbed by what happens to you. You are disturbed by what you think about what happens to you. That's not just philosophy. That's neuroscience. That's therapy. That's the foundation of almost every evidence-based psychological framework ever developed. Viktor Frankl survived Nazi concentration camps, some of the most horrific conditions a human being has ever endured, and came out the other side writing about the freedom that could never be taken from him. The freedom to choose his response. He wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Now think about that. If a man in a concentration camp could find that space, that gap between what happened and how he chose to respond, what is your excuse? I say that not to minimize your pain. Your problems are real. Your struggles are real. But somewhere in the gap between what happened and what you did next, lies the 93% that you can actually fix. Section 3, the stories we inherit. Here's something nobody talks about enough. A lot of the problems you think are life's problems are actually inherited stories. Patterns you absorbed from your family, your culture, your early experiences, long before you had the awareness to question them. Let me tell you about a woman named Clara. Clara was 34 years old and couldn't hold down a relationship. Every time she got close to someone, she found a reason to push them away. Too clingy. Too distant. Not ambitious enough. Too ambitious. She spent years blaming her partners. "I just attract the wrong people," she would tell her friends. "Life keeps sending me broken men." Then one day, a therapist asked her a simple question. "What did love look like in your house growing up?" Clara went quiet. Her father had been emotionally unavailable. Her mother had been loving but anxious, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And without realizing it, Clara had built her entire emotional blueprint around those two people. She wasn't attracting broken people. She was selecting for familiarity. She was recreating the emotional environment she grew up in, because it felt like home, even though home had been painful. That realization cracked something open in her. Because the moment you see the pattern, you can no longer pretend you don't see it. And that is the beginning of the 93%. Your patterns are not your destiny. They are just old code running on outdated hardware. And the extraordinary news, the genuinely life-changing news, is that human beings can rewrite that code. Not overnight. Not without discomfort. But it can be done. Section 4, the blame reflex and why it feels so right. Let's talk about why blaming life is so seductive. Because it doesn't feel like weakness in the moment. It feels like clarity. It feels like seeing the situation for what it really is. Someone wrongs you, blame feels like justice. A plan falls apart, blame feels like an explanation. Life gets hard, blame feels like a shield. There's a psychological term for this, the external locus of control. It means you believe that the forces shaping your life are outside of you. Luck. Other people. The economy. The government. The algorithm. The weather. And here is the deeply uncomfortable truth about people with a strong external locus of control. They suffer more. Study after study, decade after decade, the research is consistent. People who believe that external forces control their lives report higher rates of anxiety, depression, helplessness, and dissatisfaction. Not because life is harder for them, but because they have given away their agency. And agency, the felt sense that your choices matter, that your actions have consequences, that you are the author of your story, is one of the most fundamental human needs. Strip a person of agency and you strip them of meaning. Give it back, and you give them their life back. Section 5, the mirror moment. I want you to think about the last time something went wrong in your life. Not a tragedy. Not a catastrophe. Just something that frustrated you, upset you, derailed you. Got it? Hold it in your mind. Now ask yourself these 3 questions, and be ruthlessly honest. 1. Was there any decision I made that contributed to this outcome? Even a small one. Even a decision I made weeks or months ago. 2. Was there a warning sign I ignored? A voice in my gut I talked myself out of listening to? 3. If I could go back, knowing what I know now, is there something I would do differently? If you answered yes to any of those, and most honest people will, then you just found your 93%. Not to punish yourself. Not to spiral into shame and self-blame. That's not the point at all. The point is this: if you had any influence over the outcome, then you have power. And if you have power, you are not helpless. And if you are not helpless, the future is not fixed. This is the mirror moment. The moment you stop looking out the window for someone to blame and start looking in the mirror for someone who can change things. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, one of the most powerful men who ever lived, kept a private journal. Not for the public. Not for history. Just for himself. And in that journal, he wrote this: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." A man who commanded armies and governed empires chose to spend his private moments reminding himself to look inward. If it was good enough for Marcus Aurelius, it's worth a few minutes of your time. Section 6, the 7%, honoring real pain. Before we go any further, I need to say something important. Because someone listening right now has been through something real. Something heavy. Something that was not their fault. Abuse. Loss. Illness. Injustice. Systemic barriers that were built before you were born. The 7% is real. And it deserves to be honored, not dismissed. This is not a message that everything in your life is your fault. That would be naive. That would be cruel. And it would be a lie. Some things that happened to you were genuinely done to you. And the pain from those things is legitimate. The grief is legitimate. The anger is legitimate. But here is what the Stoics understood, and what modern psychology confirms: even within circumstances we didn't choose, we still have some say in how we carry them forward. You did not choose your wound. But you do have some say in whether the wound becomes your identity or your origin story. There is a difference between a person who says, "I am broken because of what happened to me," and a person who says, "I have been through something that nearly broke me, and I am still here." Both people went through the same thing. But they are living in fundamentally different stories. One story keeps you small. The other one sets you free. Section 7, the habit of self-accountability. So how do you actually begin to reclaim your 93%? Every evening, just 5 minutes, you ask yourself 2 questions. Question 1, where did I react today instead of respond? There's a difference. A reaction is automatic. It's the snap, the shutdown, the spiral. A response is intentional. It's the pause, the breath, the choice. Where did you react when you could have responded? Question 2, what is one thing I could have done differently? Not to torture yourself. Not to reopen wounds. But to gently, honestly, locate your agency in the day's events. This practice, done consistently, rewires the brain. Neuroscientists call it developing metacognitive awareness. The Stoics called it the evening review. Different words. Same ancient technology. Epictetus told his students, never say about anything, "I have lost it," but, "I have returned it." That kind of reframing doesn't come naturally. It is a practice. It is a discipline. It is something you build, slowly, imperfectly, but steadily, day by day. We've covered a lot of ground already. We've talked about the comfortable lie of blame. The 93% that lives inside your control. The inherited stories that quietly run your life. The mirror moment. And the daily practice that begins to shift. We're going to talk about the role of identity in all of this. Because here's the thing most self-help content never tells you: you cannot consistently act in ways that contradict who you believe yourself to be. Change the identity, and the behavior follows. We'll talk about how to do that. And we're going to close with something practical. A framework you can use starting today, not someday, not when things calm down, not when life gets easier, today. Because the goal was never to wait for life to stop being difficult. The goal is to become someone who no longer needs it to be. If this is speaking to something in you, if you felt something shift, even slightly, then you are exactly where you need to and NBSP, be. Section 8, the 4 arenas where we give away our power. There are 4 major areas of life where the blame reflex shows up most powerfully. 4 arenas where people look outward for answers that are actually waiting inside. Relationships. Money. Career. And health. Let's take them one by one. Arena 1, relationships. There is a man I want to tell you about. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel had a pattern. Every relationship he entered started beautifully: connection, excitement, possibility. And then, somewhere around the 6-month mark, things would begin to erode. Arguments. Distance. Eventually, a painful ending. After the 4th relationship ended this way, Daniel sat across from a friend and said, "I don't understand it. I keep meeting people who can't handle real intimacy." His friend, a brave friend, looked at him and said quietly, "Or, maybe you keep leaving before they get the chance to. Daniel didn't speak to that friend for 2 weeks. But he thought about what she said every single day. Because she was right. Daniel had grown up in a home where love was conditional. Where closeness was followed by withdrawal. And without realizing it, he had become an expert at manufacturing distance, just before the point where things might have gotten truly vulnerable. He wasn't attracting emotionally unavailable people. He was the emotionally unavailable person. That realization was devastating. And it was also the most liberating thing that ever happened to him. Because the moment you see that you are the common denominator, not as a source of shame, but as a source of power, everything changes. You stop waiting for people to be different. You start asking what you can do differently. You stop casting yourself as the victim of other people's choices. You start understanding that your own unexamined patterns are quietly co-authoring every relationship you enter. The Stoics had a word for this kind of self-examination, prosoc. Attention to oneself. Watchfulness over your own inner life. It is the most loving thing you can do, for yourself, and for everyone you are in relationship with. Arena 2, Money. Let's talk about money. Because this is where the blame reflex gets very loud. The economy is rigged. I never had the right connections. People like me don't get those opportunities. If I had been born into a different family. Now, some of this is true. Systemic inequality is real. Generational wealth is real. The playing field is not level, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. But here is the question that cuts through all of that. Within the circumstances you were actually given, are you making the best possible decisions? Let me tell you about a woman named Priya. Priya grew up in a working-class household. No financial education. No safety net. No wealthy relatives to call when things got tight. By her late 20s she was in debt, living paycheck to paycheck, convinced that financial stability was simply not available to people like her. And then one evening she sat down, really sat down, and looked honestly at where her money was going. Subscriptions she had forgotten about. Meals out 4 times a week. Clothes she bought when she was anxious. A gym membership she hadn't used in 8 months. She wasn't poor because the system had failed her, though the system hadn't helped. She was struggling because nobody had ever taught her to see money clearly, and she had never stopped long enough to teach herself. She didn't become wealthy overnight. But she started making different choices. Small ones. Consistent ones. And over time those choices compounded, not just in her bank account, but in her sense of agency over her own life. The Stoics were not naive about wealth. Seneca wrote about it extensively. His view. Money is neither good nor bad. What matters is your relationship to it, whether you are its master or its servant. Most people never examine that relationship. They just experience the anxiety it produces and blame the world for the shortage. Examine the relationship. That is where the 93% lives. Arena 3, Career. How many people do you know who are deeply unhappy in their work, and deeply certain that it's someone else's fault? The toxic boss. The company that doesn't recognize talent. The industry that's too competitive. The economy that doesn't reward hard work anymore. And again, some of that is real. Bad bosses exist. Some industries are brutal. Some doors are harder to open than others. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat down, truly sat down, and asked yourself, what do I actually want? What am I genuinely good at? What have I been avoiding doing out of fear? Because most career unhappiness is not caused by external circumstances. It is caused by a decision deferred. A risk not taken. A conversation avoided. A skill never developed because developing it would mean admitting you didn't already have it. There is a man, let's call him James, who spent 11 years in a career he hated. Every year, he told himself he would leave. Every year, something got in the way. The timing wasn't right. The market was uncertain. He had a mortgage. He had responsibilities. One day his doctor told him his blood pressure was dangerously high and asked him about his stress levels. James broke down in the office. Not because of the diagnosis, but because he suddenly saw, with terrible clarity, that he had been slowly paying for his own paralysis with his health. He left that job 4 months later. Started over in a field that lit something up in him. It was hard. It was frightening. He took a significant pay cut for the first 2 years. And he will tell you, anyone who asks, that it was the best decision he ever made. And that his only regret was waiting 11 years to make it. The 93% in your career is not about getting lucky. It is about getting honest. Honest about what you want. Honest about what you fear. Honest about the choices you have been framing as circumstances. Arena 4, Health. This one is delicate. Because genuine illness, chronic conditions, genetic predispositions, the randomness of biology, is real and should never be minimized. But, for the vast majority of people, the state of their physical health is significantly, not entirely, but significantly, a product of daily decisions made over years. What they eat. Whether they move. How they sleep. How they manage stress. Whether they go to the doctor when something feels wrong or wait until they can't ignore it anymore. And yet, when health deteriorates, the reflex is to feel like a victim of the body. Like the body betrayed you. When often, if we are honest, we know exactly when it started. We remember the years of poor sleep we dismissed. The stress we didn't process. The warning signs we explained away. The body keeps a record of every decision. It is patient. And eventually, it presents the bill. This is not blame. This is biology. And the empowering side of that truth is this: the same way that consistent poor choices compound into poor health, consistent good choices compound into resilience and vitality. You are not powerless over your body. You are in a constant, ongoing negotiation with it. Show up to that negotiation with intention. Section 9, The Identity Problem. Now we get to the part that most people miss. You can understand everything I've said so far. You can nod along, feel the truth of it, even be moved by it. And then go home and do exactly what you've always done. Why? Because behavior follows identity. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your identity, to the level of who you believe yourself to be at the deepest level. If you believe, underneath everything, that you are someone who is unlucky, you will subconsciously seek out evidence that confirms that belief. You will notice every setback and miss every opening. If you believe you are someone who things don't work out for, you will find ways, subtle and not so subtle, to ensure they don't. Not because you are broken, but because the mind is extraordinarily good at making the external world match the internal story. This is not mysticism. This is cognitive psychology. It's called confirmation bias, self-fulfilling prophecy, behavioral consistency. Different names for the same mechanism. So the question becomes, not what do you need to do differently, but who do you need to become? Let me give you a simple example. 2 people trying to stop smoking. One says, I am trying to quit smoking. The other says, I am not a smoker. Research, actual research, shows that the second person is significantly more likely to succeed. Because one is fighting a habit. The other is living an identity. The Stoics understood this. They didn't just talk about virtuous behavior. They talked about becoming a virtuous person. The behavior, they said, would follow. So who are you becoming? Not who do you want to appear to be. Not who do you wish you were. But who are you, right now, in this season of your life, actively, deliberately, becoming? Because that question, held honestly, returned to daily, is more powerful than any single action you could take. Section 10, The Framework, REAL. Alright. Let's make this practical. Because transformation without a map is just intention. And intention without action is just a comfortable feeling that fades by Tuesday. I want to give you a framework. 4 steps. Simple enough to remember, deep enough to actually work. I call it RAL. R, recognize. Before you can change anything, you have to see it clearly. Without flinching. When something goes wrong today, before you reach for blame, pause. Ask, what role did I play in this? Not to punish yourself. Just to see. Recognition is the light switch. Nothing changes in the dark. E, examine. Once you've recognized your role, go one layer deeper. Why did you make the choice you made? What belief was underneath it? What fear? What pattern from the past? This is where the inherited stories live. This is where Clara found her emotional blueprint. This is where Daniel found his habit of manufactured distance. You don't have to excavate your entire childhood. Just ask, is this a pattern? Have I been here before? If the answer is yes, you've just found gold. Adjust. This is the action step. But notice it's the 3rd step, not the 1st. Because action without recognition and examination is just busyness. It's rearranging furniture in a house that needs rewiring. Once you see the pattern and understand where it comes from, what is one thing you can do differently? Not 10 things. Not a complete life overhaul. One thing. Today. The Stoics called this kathekon, the appropriate action in the present moment. Not grand gestures. Not dramatic declarations. Just the next right step, taken with full awareness. L, lock it in. This is the identity step. After you've recognized, examined, and adjusted, you name who you are becoming. Not, I am going to try to be more patient. I am a person who pauses before reacting. Not, I want to get better with money. I am someone who makes intentional financial decisions. Speak it. Write it. Return to it when the old pattern pulls. Because the old pattern will pull. It always does. It was built over years, and it doesn't dissolve overnight. But every time you return to the new identity, every time you choose the response over the reaction, the audit over the excuse, the mirror over the window, you lay down another layer of the new self. And layers compound. Section 11, The Long Game. I want to be honest with you about something. This is not a quick fix. There is no episode, no book, no course, no single conversation that rewires decades of learned patterns overnight. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. What I am telling you is slower and more reliable than that. It is the long game. It is the daily choice, made imperfectly, made again after failure, made with more grace over time, to be the author of your life rather than its audience. There will be days when you slip into the old blame reflex and don't catch it until later. That's fine. The catch itself is progress. There will be days when you do everything right and things still fall apart. That's life. That's the 7%. And even then, even in the falling apart, you will find that you have more to stand on than you used to. Because you will know, in a way that goes beyond words, that you are not powerless. That is the gift buried inside the 93%. Not perfection. Not control over everything. Just the unshakable knowledge that your choices matter. That your response matters. That you matter, not as a passive recipient of whatever life delivers, but as an active force in your own story. Marcus Aurelius, again, in that private journal no one was supposed to read, wrote this. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Stop arguing with life about what it should have given you. Start becoming the person who works skillfully with what they have. That is the 93%. That is the whole practice. Closing, the invitation. We started this conversation with a man who blamed his alarm, his coffee cup, his city, his morning. I wonder where he is now, if he's still listening. Because if he is, if you are, then something in you already knows that the story you've been telling isn't the only story available. You can keep the old story. It's familiar. It's comfortable. It will never ask anything difficult of you. Or you can pick up the pen. Not to rewrite the past, that's not available to anyone. But to write the next chapter with more intention, more honesty, more courage than the last one. That's all any of us can do. And it turns out, more than enough. If this landed with you, if you felt something shift, something open, something that makes you want to show up differently tomorrow than you did today, then you are exactly the kind of person this channel was built for. Subscribe to the Stoic Path. We don't do hype here. We don't do empty motivation. We do the deep work, the honest, sometimes uncomfortable, always worthwhile work of building a life from the inside out. Every episode is a conversation. Every conversation is an invitation. And you are always welcome here. Until next time, keep looking in the mirror, not out the window. Take care of yourself. And we'll see you on the path.